Ladies and gents, this is ML's Like Teen Spirit. Today I've got Neil with me. Neil, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, John. How are you?
Good, very well. Welcome, and thank you for participating today. Neil, you've never been with me before, but you've got an extensive analytics background. It would be great if you could introduce yourself first, and then we'll get on to your topic.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Neil Charles. I'm originally an econometrician, marketing mix modeling person. So I started with a specialist consultancy doing that, doing advertising measurement for those who aren't familiar with marketing mix modeling. I spent a long time in big media agencies. I spent a year in the music industry. And then a year ago, I launched my own consultancy, Sequence Analytics. So I'm still doing advertising measurement things, but I'm doing them for me now, kind of branching out on my own.
Amen to that, Neil. Look, congratulations then on starting that off. Your topic today, we'll get on to advertising and measurement another time, but you're here today to talk about a topic that is of particular interest to me. There'll be a few people watching this thinking, Jesus, is John obsessed with this or what? The answer is yes, but I didn't want it to just be my voice. So we're going to talk about synthetic data, and you'd come across my radar because you've been doing some work in this space, like fun examples that illustrate the concept. So we'll just get down to it. Neil, what the hell is synthetic data?
What is it? I mean, I guess the listeners to your podcast will know what it is, but the idea that we generate data out of an LLM, large language model. So rather than, I mean, in the case of surveys, rather than or alongside asking real people to rank political parties or, why they buy things, we ask an LLM to pretend to be, and there's varieties of sophistication, but you can ask it directly, score these brands from 1 to 10, or you can say to it, you are a 25-year-old mum of 2 from Birmingham. Now tell me what car you're likely to buy, that sort of thing. So it's a very more or less sophisticated variations on that, but asking questions of an LLM to generate data is what we're talking about.
Got it. So the bit you said there, we've got the persona based, like you are a mum of 2 doing this, or you're a busy professional doing that. So people have the capability to use persona-based prompting and zoom in on the type of information they need, or extract information directly. Hopefully some people will jump straight off this, watching this, and go and try it for themselves for their own brand. Neil, let's get into your examples, because they are just for fun. The one that caught my eye first, it would have been a Christmas time one, and you had a segmentation of ingredients from the Christmas dinner. I wondered if you could sort of talk through that one first, like the sort of workflow, roughly what you were doing. I know you're a coder, but like take us along on what happened to produce this.
I'll explain. We're starting with the silliest one, by the way, and then the last one I did. So I quite often do these little dev projects. I mean, over the years, when you get a topic like this, as data scientists, as statisticians, whatever label you like, I think you can read a lot of research, but alongside that, just going and poking the thing hard and seeing what you can make it do yourself is so valuable to get a feel for how it works and what it does. So I was like, well, we're hearing lots about synthetic respondents, synthetic data. I want to give this thing a poke and see what it does. So charged up my ChatGPT API tokens and kind of went building. What I ended up with, I was chasing for a little engine that could basically segment anything was the challenge I gave to myself. And so not doing the persona based stuff, but just going, can I extract information from ChatGPT to say, build me a segmentation of airline brands, I think I did, and then movies, and then types of music we might look at in a minute, and then ended up at Christmas dinner ingredients because it was Christmas and I was trying to be slightly viral on social, so I was just being silly. The idea is as a workflow, and you could do this different ways, but the way I prompted the LLM was trying to get everything I needed from it and not give it anything of my opinion, just see how well it would do at returning everything in a few steps. And so I said, well, first of all, give me a list of whatever it is. Give me a list of British bands. Give me a list of Christmas dinner ingredients. Now for yourself, generate, and it took some iteration of the prompting this, but finding a good prompt that said, why might people choose one of these things over another was essentially, so give me a second list. And for Christmas dinner, they go, oh, it might be, I like the sweetness of it. I like the traditionalness of it. It's not even a word, but you know what I mean. And you get a set of attributes that somebody might choose in this market to make their selections. And then you get the LLM to score it and say, go back to your original list of things, in our case, sprouts and turkey and stuff, and score them out of 10 against all of these attributes. And now you've got your synthetic data, because you've got a big matrix of products or brands or whatever it is, or Christmas dinner ingredients that the LLM has come up with on its own, and a set of attributes that it's come up with on its own, and you've scored it 1 to 10 against all of those things. And you can segment that. You can do whatever you want with it, really, but you can do regular k-means just to produce a kind of map of which of these things does the LLM think are similar. And obviously with Christmas dinners, you then, if it works, which it did, you get a grouping going, these are sides, these are mains, these are traditional, these are desserts. And you kind of go, yeah, I can see what the LLM is thinking underneath. It's quite a nice way of exploring, the space of what it thinks about things, is getting it to name these attributes and then name its scores. We'll probably get into it in a minute, but the edge cases are quite fun where it goes wrong. But in general, it's quite nice. And, for someone like me coming from big media agencies, it's a technique that you could go, oh, wow, here's an unfamiliar market. Tell me about the spread of airlines in another country that I've never been to, or autos brands or whatever. If it's a market I'm unfamiliar with, you can get a kind of admittedly quite superficial but sensible portrait of that market very, very quickly by just prompting the LLM in those 3 steps. Tell me about the brands or the things, tell me about their attributes, and now score it. Seemed to work quite well.
Love it. And tell me about the attributes. Test your memory now, Neil. Do you recall anything, I don't know, strange or interesting about the attributes when you requested, like how do people choose a carrot over a sprout? Do you recall any of the?
The Christmas dinner one is quite sort of, it's not the best example to use, to be honest, because it was a silly bit of social fun. Although it worked nicely. The one that sticks in my mind was when I did movies, and it produced a very, very sensible map of kind of big Hollywood movies with all the stuff that you'd expect to be grouped together. And you go, okay, that's great. I like that. Hang on. Why Star Wars with the musicals? It just stuck out as the one thing that you just go, no, that Star Wars is in with all the Sinatra movies and stuff like that. You go, no, that's not right. So I went back to just normal front end of ChatGPT and started asking it questions to work out why. And the reason why, if you went to the underlying data, was the LLM had scored, it had decided choreography was a thing that was a reason people might watch films. So, as you'd expect, it's got famous actors in it, it's got action, it's got romance, was all the attributes it come up with. And one of the attributes it come up with was choreography. And it had scored Star Wars 9 out of 10 for choreography, which led to it then being in with the musicals. It had also scored it very high on music, which is fine. It's John Williams, it's famous for that. So you go fine on music. But the reason it had landed with the musicals was it scored high for choreography. So I went in the front end of ChatGPT and went, has Star Wars got choreography in it? And it immediately went, yeah, loads, lightsaber duels. And I kind of went, oh, and you're like, I can see what you've done. You've completely misinterpreted what I want, which is the danger of LLMs. But in a totally, you can totally see why it did it, which brings you onto this extreme care that I think you need in niches and in kind of more detailed areas that you use this. So superficially, it does a very sensible thing. And then you go, hang on, there's this, where did this edge case come from? And it's misunderstood you, or it's scored something in a slightly weird way. So that one stuck in my mind. It was fun, it was great, and it was a sensible thing for it to do, but it was wrong.
Yeah, back and kind of double check this rather than sort of blindly running off with your chart or something like this, and we'll superimpose these over the top while you're speaking. The other one we referenced earlier was the bands. And this is pretty interesting. I'll flip it about on top of us while we're speaking right now. But this was quite interesting because you had some distinct clusters. I don't know what the attributes were, but the one part where there was some overlap is kind of this. I don't know what you call them here. Like I always call it a post Britpop era, kind of like as Radiohead and some of these sorts of bands came through. Significant overlap with, like, I don't know, Madness and some other bands that maybe just slightly predate but are from a similar style. So this overlapping cluster kind of at face value looks like, the LLM can't separate them well, but it does show nicely the transition from one era of similar music to another era. So that was pretty cool.
It does. I actually, I can't remember who it was now, but I ended up listening to a new band off the back of this because that point of it's really good when you're exploring something that you don't know. So I told it to segment niche British guitar bands, and kind of something popped up next to a couple that I liked. Oh, cool! I'll call that up on Spotify. Hey, this is all right. So it did quite a sensible. I mean, you can see it with the map that we've got. It did quite a sensible thing. Sensible sectors emerge that you'd expect. Like you say, you kind of get your guitar bands grouped together and your kind of less mainstream bands grouped together, and you go, yeah, that's a picture of British music. And if you didn't know anything about it, you've got a very nice quick head start that allows you to sort of make some progress in this market or whatever it is you're doing. And potentially a nice way to explore areas that you don't know about it. But like I say, it's quite high level, average, superficial, partly because I was just playing, and partly because I think that's in the nature of the way an LLM works, that you can't push that hard into areas where it's going to start struggling for data. In the same way that I code in R rather than Python, and the LLM will struggle in R more than it struggles in Python just because it's got less training data. There's less of a corpus of stuff out there to give it the right answer.
So Neil, let's zoom in onto these. It sounds like you're nearly giving me a watch out here. Let's zoom in on those, because I became so excited about this area because Professor Ritson came out with publicized a study where he showed a brand had shown that they were able to replicate consumer research in automotive, almost exactly. Something that normally will have been a global exercise, multiple markets, probably at many millions. They were able to create a similar matrix of results just through querying the LLM, which is quite exciting. Yeah. But it might not always be that way. So I wonder if you can kind of give a forecast for this area, tips, watch outs for people thinking about leaving this interview and diving into their GPT.
So I think I don't, that study's great, and it was very, very impressive that you get this mapped overlay of the brand scores of the different autos brands, and it's really similar to regular consumer research.
We said, it's interesting what Professor Ritson showed, but then you can start from anywhere. I'll edit this together.
So we were talking about this study of the autos brands, and that the LLMs have managed to produce a very, very similar map of brand scores to what we know is the ground truth from surveys, which is impressive. But if there's a market it should work in, that's the market. People talk about car brands an awful lot online. They're very, very large. They're not niche. You've got this big corpus of information for it to do the score. Even so, like I mentioned before, in the same way as the programming, you kind of go, we get used to this stuff quite quickly, but it is deeply impressive that it can do that. My worry is where it's less about the LLMs actually, and more the way that people will be tempted to use them. So because that works, you'll be tempted, and in the same way as my superficial, silly kind of maps worked, as long as you pointed them. If you pointed them at niche sectors, it didn't work. So I work with this quite niche furniture brand, and I tried to get it to profile their sector, and it just fell apart. It didn't work at all. So as long as you pointed at big sectors, it was great. And that's probably true of the autos. What would concern me is people will be tempted to push it into an area where they don't have ground truth data. So you don't know at what point the LLM is starting to fail, other than maybe it goes completely and it gives you stupid answers. But there'll be some level where it's giving you very plausible looking answers because they're good at that. But it's started to break down. And I've seen things like the idea that you could go after profiling high net worth individuals, say, because they are expensive to survey. Mm-hmm. And just as an example, you can see immediately why that might start to struggle, because high net worth individuals, other than Elon Musk, aren't posting all over the internet all the time. You know, so their opinions do not form the corpus of what's on Reddit that you can train your model on. So we know they hallucinate. We know they will come out with plausible answers. You know, they will always try to answer a question in a plausible way. You're going to get an answer. Who knows? You know, it may or may not be, but there will definitely be, because there is in every other field, a point where you've pushed too hard and it has broken down, and it's going to be very hard to know where that is. The other one is, you know, having worked in big media agencies for so long, everyone's in a hurry, everyone's short a budget. You know, in the real world, it's going to be very, very tempting. We used to run, you know, even on big pitches, it was very common to run the agency survey, where you just survey the staff. And then maybe the fact that it was a staff survey gets relegated to a very small footnote in the actual presentation. And in a world where that happens, you can see the temptation with an LLM to start relegating the fact that it came from an LLM to a very small footnote, and making very confident statements about what you now think you know. So that's my worry. It's less, the models are really impressive, but they have limits, and people are going to be very, very tempted to push beyond those limits. That's my worry.
Good. Well, Neil, look, there were some fun projects that caught my eye. Thank you for sharing all your insights. I take it that tip here is for everyone to make sure they're having a go. But if you can compare this to compare your outputs to some type of ground truth data to help you understand, get confidence in what you're seeing will be good, and just not push too far. I think people can intuitively figure out if they're trying to search for, I don't know, mums of three that drive a Fiat Panda in the Arctic. You know, they're probably pushing it a bit too far to get some realistic results. So, Neil, thanks for taking us through it. Ladies and gents, this has been ML's Like Team Spirit.